My name is Autumn Mercer. On Christmas Eve, I cooked dinner for 12 people. Nobody came. At 8 p.m., I opened Facebook. My parents were at my sister's house. My sisters were there. My cousins were there. Everyone I had been waiting for was celebrating without me. I wasn't forgotten. I was replaced. So I went to church alone. Right before the final hymn, Pastor Miller stepped to the microphone and said, "3 years ago, Dorothy Mercer left a message to be played if Autumn ever spent Christmas Eve here by herself." Then my grandmother's voice filled the church, and the first thing she said was, "If Autumn is sitting there alone tonight, everything happened exactly as I feared." By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The turkey, the mashed potatoes, Grandma's cinnamon rolls, 12 place settings, 12 folded napkins, 12 names in my head. I checked my phone. Nothing. No messages, no delays, no cancellations. I told myself traffic was bad. I was wrong. At 6:30, I reheated the gravy. At 7, I lit the candles. At 7:15, I called Mom. No answer. Then a text arrived. "Running a little late." Just that. No explanation, no details. I believed her, because that's what I always did. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. My older sister Brooke had posted photos. I opened them, then froze. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, my younger sister Emily, my cousins, my aunt, even relatives visiting from another state, all smiling, all eating dinner, at Brooke's house, without me. I stared at the photos, again and again. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe they planned to stop by later. Then I noticed something. My pecan pie, the one I'd made that morning. Sitting in the center of Brooke's table, my stomach dropped. They hadn't forgotten me. They took my dessert and left me behind. The caption read, "Christmas with the people who matter most." Hundreds of likes, heart emojis, family comments. Then I noticed something else. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, not once, as if I didn't exist. That hurt more than the empty house. 10 minutes later, my cousin Ava texted, "Why didn't you come?" I stared at the screen, then typed, "Come where?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, she replied, "Brooke's Christmas dinner." My hand started shaking, because Ava genuinely thought I chose not to attend. Someone had lied. I called Dad. This time he answered, "Autumn. No Merry Christmas, no apology, nothing." I asked one question. Why wasn't I invited? Silence. Then he sighed. The same sigh he always used when he didn't want accountability, and said, "Don't ruin Christmas." Then he hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, trying not to cry. A few minutes later, Emily finally texted. Just one sentence. "Brooke thought you'd change the mood." That was it. No explanation, no defense, no apology. Apparently, I had become a mood, a problem, a person easier to exclude than include. At 9 p.m., I turned off the dining room lights. 12 untouched plates sat on the table. I couldn't look at them anymore. So I grabbed my coat and drove to the late Christmas Eve service. Grandma loved that service. For a moment, I almost stayed home. Then I heard her voice in my head. "Go anyway." So I did. I didn't know it yet. That decision was about to change everything. The church was nearly full. Families sat together. Children whispered. Parents smiled. I sat alone in the very last pew, trying not to let anyone see my tears. Then Pastor Miller walked past. He stopped, looked at me, and something in his expression changed. Not surprise, recognition, as if he'd been expecting me. Then he quietly said, "Autumn, please don't leave after the service." My heart skipped, because Pastor Miller wasn't smiling. And suddenly, Christmas Eve didn't feel ordinary anymore. The final hymn ended. Families gathered their coats. Children ran toward the doors. Within minutes, most of the church was empty. I stayed where I was, watching people leave, wondering why Pastor Miller wanted me to wait. Then he appeared beside my pew, holding a small wooden box. My pulse quickened. Pastor Miller sat beside me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he placed the box on the bench between us and said, "Dorothy gave me this 3 years ago." My throat tightened. Grandma. Even hearing her name hurt. Then he added, "She told me to keep it safe." I stared at the box. "What is it?" Pastor Miller smiled sadly. "Something she hoped I'd never need." Those words sent a chill through me, because Grandma wasn't dramatic. She didn't speak in riddles. If she planned something like this, she had a reason. Pastor Miller opened the box. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing fancy. No labels. No explanation. Then he looked directly at me. Before she passed, Dorothy recorded several messages. I frowned. "Several?" He nodded. And suddenly I felt very small, very confused. Then Pastor Miller explained. Grandma updated her instructions every Christmas, every year, for nearly a decade. She only changed one thing: the condition. Who should hear the message? And when? My stomach tightened, because that sounded incredibly specific. The church lights dimmed. The sanctuary was nearly empty. Pastor Miller connected the flash drive. Then Grandma's voice filled the room. For the first time in 3 years, I stopped breathing. "Hello, sweetheart." Tears immediately filled my eyes, because it sounded exactly like her. Then Grandma said, "If Autumn is sitting here alone tonight..." She paused. Just long enough. Then everything happened exactly as I feared. My chest tightened, because suddenly this wasn't a Christmas message. It was a warning. And somehow, she'd seen it coming. Grandma continued. "You were never difficult." Silence. "You were never hard to love." I started crying. Real crying. The kind you can't hide. Then came the sentence that broke me. "You simply loved people who expected love without giving it back." I wasn't the only one listening. A few church members remained near the back. Volunteers, choir members, people cleaning after service. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Several were crying too. Because Grandma wasn't talking about one Christmas. She was talking about years. Years of patterns. Years of hurt. Years I kept excusing. The recording ended. The church sat silent. Then Pastor Miller handed me a bundle of envelopes tied together with red ribbon. I looked down. 12 envelopes. Each marked with a year. Each written in Grandma's handwriting. My hands trembled. Because apparently Grandma hadn't left me one Christmas message. She'd left 12. And according to Pastor Miller, I wasn't supposed to open them all at once. I got home just after midnight. The house was still exactly as I left it. 12 empty chairs. 12 untouched plates. But somehow it didn't hurt the same way anymore. I sat beside the Christmas tree and opened the first envelope. The year written on it was from 3 years earlier, the year Grandma died. Inside was a single page. At the bottom she wrote, "Read only one letter each night." I already knew I wasn't going to listen. The first letter wasn't about money, or possessions, or family history. It was about me. Grandma wrote, "You will spend years trying to earn love from people who already decided to take it for granted." I stopped reading, because it felt less like a letter, and more like someone describing my life. The next envelope hit even harder. Grandma wrote, "When you tell the truth, they will call you dramatic." I laughed. Actually laughed, because I'd heard that word my entire life. Dramatic, sensitive, emotional, difficult. Funny how those labels always appeared when someone didn't want to hear what I was saying. Then my phone rang. Mom. The first call of the night. I stared at it. Didn't answer. A voicemail arrived minutes later. Her voice sounded nervous. Call me when you can. No apology. No explanation. Just discomfort. That told me everything. The third envelope mentioned Mom directly. Not by name, but clearly. One person will stay silent because silence feels safer than honesty. I closed my eyes. Because Grandma wasn't guessing. She knew. She'd watched it happen for years. Mom never started conflicts. But she never stopped them either. And sometimes that's worse. At 1:30 a.m., Emily texted, Mom's upset. That was the message. Not, are you okay? Not, Merry Christmas. Not, I'm sorry. Mom's upset. As if I was responsible for everyone's feelings except my own. I didn't reply. This one was shorter. Only 3 paragraphs. But one line made my stomach tighten. The Christmas they leave you behind will not be your saddest Christmas. I stared at that sentence, then continued reading. It will be the Christmas you finally stop chasing people who enjoy being chased. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because she was right. The next morning, Pastor Miller called. His voice sounded careful. Then he asked, Have you opened all the envelopes? I hesitated. Maybe. He laughed softly, then said, Dorothy knew you'd do that. For the first time all night, I smiled. Then Pastor Miller became serious. Did you read the final envelope? My smile disappeared. Final envelope? I looked at the bundle. There was one envelope I hadn't opened. The last one. Different handwriting. Different paper. No year written on it. Just my name. If you've ever had someone understand you better than your own family did, comment, she knew. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter unlike the others. Short, direct, almost urgent. If you're reading this, then they finally stopped pretending. My pulse quickened. Then I reached the next paragraph. And froze. Because Grandma wasn't talking about Christmas anymore. She was talking about the family house. And according to her letter, something was already happening behind my back. I read the paragraph 3 times, then a 4th. Because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Grandma wrote, One day they will stop treating the house like a home and start treating it like an opportunity. My pulse quickened, because that sounded exactly like Brooke, and exactly like something she would never say out loud. At 8 a.m., my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, mostly family. Interesting thing about guilt. It arrives fast when people realize they've been caught. Brooke had called 7 times, Emily 4, Mom 3, Dad twice. I answered none of them. Pastor Miller called again. This time he didn't waste words. Autumn, did anyone mention a buyer? I sat upright. A buyer? Silence. Then he sighed. That sigh told me more than his words. The Christmas gathering wasn't just Christmas. There was another reason everyone needed to be together. And I wasn't supposed to know it. Later that afternoon, I visited Mrs. Langley, Grandma's old neighbor. 90 years old. Sharp memory. Sharp tongue. The moment I mentioned Brooke's Christmas dinner, she frowned. Then said, They've been showing that house to people for weeks. My stomach dropped. For weeks. Not days. Weeks. And nobody told me. Mrs. Langley remembered details. Too many details. Luxury SUV, real estate visits, contractors walking through, measurements being taken. She thought everyone already knew. I forced a smile. Apparently everyone except me did. That realization hurt more than Christmas Eve. That night, Mom finally reached me. The second I answered, she started crying. Not apologizing. Crying. Then she said, We didn't think it would happen like this. I closed my eyes. Because that's what people say when something absolutely happened exactly like this. Then she admitted it. They weren't gathering for Christmas. They were discussing the sale. The truth came out piece by piece. Brooke found the buyer. Brooke arranged the meetings. Brooke convinced everyone it was time. According to her, selling the house would help the family move forward. Funny, because every version of moving forward seemed to involve leaving me behind. Then Emily called. Unlike Mom, she sounded scared. Really scared. And for the first time in years, she told the truth. Brooke said if you came, you'd ask questions. Silence. I couldn't even answer. Because that sentence explained everything. The missing invitation, the lies, the exclusion. They weren't worried about my feelings. They were worried about my questions. That night, I reopened the final letter. Near the bottom was a sentence I'd missed. When people want something badly enough, they stop seeing family and start seeing obstacles. I stared at those words. Because Grandma hadn't predicted one Christmas. She had predicted a pattern. And somehow she knew exactly where it would lead. Just before midnight, another voicemail arrived. This time from Brooke. No anger. No confidence. No superiority. Only panic. Her voice shook. Autumn, call me back. I listened twice, then a third time, because for the first time in my life, Brooke sounded afraid, and whatever had happened that day, it was big enough to make the person who excluded me from Christmas suddenly need me. The next morning, I finally called Brooke back. She answered immediately, too quickly, like she'd been staring at her phone all night. Autumn, please. Not hello, not Merry Christmas. Please. That was new. Very new. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. The buyer found out. Apparently, the buyer had spoken to several people in town, including church members, including people who knew Grandma. And somehow Grandma's final Christmas message had become the talk of the community. Not the details. The fact that it existed. The fact that she expected me to be excluded. The fact that she saw it coming years earlier. People were asking questions. Questions Brooke couldn't answer. Instead of meeting my family, I went to the church Christmas breakfast. Pastor Miller was there. So were dozens of families. People made room for me, pulled out chairs, poured coffee, asked how I was doing. No conditions, no politics, no exclusion. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the extra person in the room. 2 days later, Dad showed up at my house. Alone. The moment I opened the door, I knew something had changed. He looked tired. Older somehow. Then he quietly said, "We handled this badly." I almost laughed. Badly? They left me alone on Christmas Eve while celebrating together somewhere else. Badly wasn't the word. But it was the closest he'd ever come to an apology. I invited him inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where 12 empty plates sat 3 nights earlier. Then I asked, "Did any of you ever plan to tell me?" Dad looked down. Long silence. Then came the answer, "No." And somehow that hurt more than all the lies, because at least lies acknowledge your existence. Their plan didn't. A few days later, I learned something else. The family group chat had been renamed months earlier. My name removed. Plans discussed. Conversations shared. Decisions made. Without me. For a moment, old feelings came back. The rejection. The anger. The sadness. Then I remembered Grandma's words. Stop begging people to choose you. And something inside me finally settled. A week after Christmas, Brooke came to see me. She looked frustrated, defensive, cornered. Then she said, "You're making everyone think we're terrible people." I stared at her. Because even now, she still didn't understand. I wasn't making anyone think anything. People were reacting to what happened. There was a difference. A huge difference. That night, I reread all 12 letters. Not once did Grandma talk about revenge. Not once did she tell me to fight. Not once did she tell me to win. Instead, she repeated the same lesson over and over. Know your worth. Protect your peace. Stop chasing people who enjoy being chased. That was the real gift. Not a house, not leverage, not power. Freedom. By spring, things looked different. The family still gathered, still celebrated, still called each other. But something had changed. The illusion was gone. Nobody could pretend anymore. Not after Christmas. Not after Grandma's message. Not after years of truth finally catching up. And strangely enough, I felt lighter. People think the worst part of my story was spending Christmas Eve alone. It wasn't. The worst part was spending years believing I had to earn a place in rooms where I already belonged. Grandma understood that long before I did. That's why she left the messages. That's why she left the letters. That's why she prepared me for the day everyone else stopped pretending. My family replaced me at Christmas because they thought being included was something they controlled. They were wrong. Because sitting alone in that church changed my life more than sitting at their dinner table ever could. And when I hear Grandma's voice now, I don't think about the people who left me behind. I think about the people who made room for me, because in the end, Grandma didn't leave me proof that I belonged to the family. She left me something better. Proof that I never needed their permission to belong in the first place.